Hello and welcome to this webinar about NDI-HX. My name is Martijn van Bodegom. I'm product manager here at Avonic, and today I'll be taking you along in a very practical way how you can implement NDI-HX into your system designs. I'll give you some practical tips and tricks. They're mostly based around how to combine NDI-HX cameras together with a PC or a laptop in everyday use. So I'll try to keep the theory to a bare minimum. I'll try to give you a hands-on introduction to these techniques. So let's move forward. Before we begin, we are using the Demio webinar platform. If you have any questions, please absolutely feel free to put them in the chat window on the right side of your screen. We'll be monitoring this actively, and if there's any questions that need to be handled during this webinar, I'll make sure to do so. We have a couple of colleagues standing by as well in the chat, so they can answer as well. So a little bit about ourselves. We're Avonic, manufacturer of PTZ cameras. If you don't know us yet, we've been around for about 13 years already. We have a background in AV distribution, and from there we started designing PTZ cameras, and that's where the company is at this very point in time. We do product design, manufacturing, warehousing, sales and support all the way from the Netherlands. So we're a local Dutch company, and we have a very fixed focus on Pro AV installation. So any fixed installation where you use your cameras, and that's why we design our products for. So including NDI-HX, which for some might sound like that this is a studio application, a broadcast application, but NDI-HX actually puts in a lot of value as well for fixed installation, and we have a couple of interesting projects going on which I can't elaborate at the moment, but quite a few big Pro AV fixed installations where NDI-HX really makes a difference. So currently we're selling our products in over 30 countries and on every continent. So today I'll be talking to you about NDI-HX. We'll have a very practical webinar. So first a very quick introduction of the CM70 NDI, which has been on the market for a few months already. Then I'll give you a quick introduction to why NDI-HX actually is necessary. A little bit of detail about NDI, MDNS, I'll explain a little bit about that. And then we move into the practical part, which is basically all focused around NDI tools and some other applications as well. So NDI-HX is implemented in our CM70 series camera. You might hear the term NDI-HX 2.0 or HX2. Well, officially those terms don't really exist, and it's all about HX. HX is what it's all about. Our cameras are HX2 if you want to put it that way, but it just means that it's implemented with the latest SDK from NDI. So it's compatible with all those techniques that NDI implements, and we'll keep updating our cameras as well. So we'll make sure you always have the latest version available to you. So it's the CM70 series cameras. For those that don't know it yet, it's a very high quality camera which has a 20 times optical zoom. It has very low latency over IP, and this is really important in combination with NDI-HX. Its encoder built-in is really fast. But other than NDI, it also supports all the other protocols that the normal CM70 supports as well. So we have SRT, we have an IP controllable tele light, we have improved low light performance, so our chip, the sensor in itself is very sensitive. We support various modes of sending video over IP, NDI of course, but also unicast TS, RTSP, RTMP, SRT, as I mentioned before. So there's lots of things you can choose from. We have a very high-speed pen tilt mode built in, so it moves really fast from one point to another. If time is really of the essence, then this is a great feature for you as well. Let's just skip over the rest. We give you, of course, the standard warranties as well. This is not so much about the camera itself, it's more about the protocol. So why is NDI so important? Well, what we see in fixed installation that a lot of video is moving from the HDMI cable or SDI cable towards the CAT cable. So with RJ45 plugs. As you can imagine, this brings about a lot of changes. So you need something to change your video signal into something you can send over IP. So why is this convenient? Well, first of all, the cabling is really inexpensive. So everybody knows that CAT cables are really easy to install. It's a very defined standard. They sell in very high volumes, and the cable lengths can be much longer compared to HDMI, for example. Distributing video through a building is much easier to go through over IP compared to the, well, I wouldn't say old-fashioned, but the traditional way of sending it over HD-Base-T, where you have very expensive and big HD-Base-T matrix switches. And when you look at the IP switches, network switches, they're much more inexpensive. So you pay a lot less for your infrastructure to distribute your video throughout the building. Of course, you can combine all these different kind of protocols into one. So when you look at our CM70 NDI camera, it can be powered using a PoA switch. So you only have a single cable for which you can run audio, video, control and power. So you only need a single cable and you're done. This makes the installation much easier than it was before. So this is where NDI HX really comes into play. So NDI HX was developed by newtek and released in 2016. It's very high efficiency. It uses hardware and software encoding and decoding. You can have all kinds of different kind of bit rates. So when talking about different bit rates, one thing you need to know is that NDI has two versions of it. You have NDI full bandwidth, which is a very high bandwidth consuming protocol, high quality, of course, low latency, but it uses a lot of bandwidth. So if you, for example, have a lot of sources on NDI available on your network, you'll quickly run out of bandwidth on your network as well. So that would mean that you need to upgrade your infrastructure to 10 gig infrastructure, which brings about a lot more cost and a lot more challenges to manage all these data streams on your network. So that's where NDI HX comes into play. It's extremely efficient and it works with much lower bandwidth. So it works even on a single 100 megabit Ethernet network. Let's move to the next one. It is also still compatible with the software that is built around the full bandwidth NDI, so it's sort of backwards compatible. It's very error resilient and it proves to be a very low latency standard as well. So if you have, for example, NDI combined with vMix, as I'm doing right here, you'll have a very low latency of up to about 80 milliseconds in an ideal under these ideal circumstances. So just to give you an idea about what's possible with NDI. So NDI also includes control, and I'll be talking about those kind of details a little bit later on in this webinar. So let's move forward. One of the big benefits of NDI is that it has an automated discovery protocol built in. So it's using MDNS discovery, which is a standard on IP infrastructure. It's a zero config discovery tool, and it's, for example, also used in Apple's Bonjour service, where a lot of printers are being discovered, and those kind of print services on the network make themselves known to be available. So it is built around resolving host names to IP addresses. So instead of just having to remember all the IP addresses, it'll give you a host name instead. So it's much easier to understand for somebody that has not as much experience with complicated networks, and makes it a lot easier for people to use it without the need of extensive training. So just to give you a bit of an idea, I'll move forward to a little bit more of a practical bit in this webinar. So let's move to the next slide. There we go. So one thing I wanted to show you is NDI in vMix. So I'll put on my vMix screen in a bit live, and I'll show you around a little bit. It might look a little bit complicated because I have a lot of windows open and you'll see myself replicated 20 times on your screen. I'm sorry about that, but that's what happens when you use a screen capture. But I'll go through the process of how it looks like when you have an NDI camera on the network. and how to add that into vMix and how that process works, just to show you how simple it is. So I've got my laptop down here. I've only hooked it up to the network. There's no physical connection between my laptop and vMix. I'm using NDI Desktop Capture to make my desktop available in vMix, and I'm using that to show my PowerPoint into vMix without the need of any expensive capture cards. So just to give you an idea how that works. Okay, let me switch to my vMix. There we go. Okay, so now you see myself 20 times replicated, which is a cool effect, but also quite distracting. So I'll try to keep this part short. In vMix, if you're not familiar with it, don't look at the complexity of it, just follow my cursor on the screen, and I'll try to show you around a little bit. So when we go and want to add another input, we simply click this button right here. As you can see, vMix is very elaborate when it comes to different sources that you can check. But in this case, we'll be interested about the NDI cameras. Now, today I have 3 NDI cameras on the network here. I've got them located in different locations in our office, just to give you an idea. It's very simple. If I want to add one, I just click one, and there you go. As you can see, I didn't need to put in any details. So NDI uses that auto discovery MDNS service to make sure that it finds all the NDI enabled devices and it displays them nicely without any need of configuration. So this makes it really simple. So as you can see, I can simply select it and I can switch to it, and there we go. So simple. If I want to add another input, I'll just go there. It'll find all the available services, all the available cameras. It also lists my laptop right there. I just add another one, it's ready, and there we go. I can switch to it. We've got our nice little Lego setup, which you've probably seen at an ISE a long time ago. And we're done. If I want to add another one, simply go the same way. Switch back to that, there we go. And my last camera right there. I can select it, switch to it, and there you have a little bit of a side view from me in my studio. As you can see, it's relatively low latency. Well, as far as I can see it, I'm not sure if it shows on your end as well, but there's not much difference between an HDMI capture card and NDI cameras when using these in vMix. It just makes the infrastructure much simpler and more efficient. One thing you need to keep in mind is that NDI actually uses quite a lot of resources. So if I switch back to my desktop, I'll show you in a bit. There you go. So I've added a few NDI resources, and as you can see, vMix is using a lot of performance on the CPU. So this is really something you need to take care of when designing a system like this. You need to have the right hardware as well. Because as you can see, this CPU, which is a Core i5, not the latest edition, but also not a very old one, and it's really struggling with decoding all this NDI sources. So keep that in mind when designing a system. Very important. So let's switch back to me for a bit. Need to find the right one. There we go. As you can see, I've got a lot going on right here, so sometimes it's really complex finding the right inputs. There we go. So I've introduced you to vMix just to give you an idea how simple it is. You simply add an NDI source, it automatically finds it, you click it, and it's available to you on the network. Simple as that. Keep in mind the resource usage, that's one really important part, of course. But if you manage that properly, there's no problem at all. If you limit yourself to 1 or 2 sources, it's already much easier for the CPU. I'm using 4 at the same time now at very high bandwidths. So that really drains the resources on my PC. But that's something you can manage if you think about that beforehand. Okay, moving forward, NDI tools. We have something that is called NDI tools. So this is a free tool set that newtek makes available to you on their website ndi.tv. You can download these tools for free, install them, and it gives you a very convenient set of tools. And I'll just go through the main ones. The one thing I included, but I'll talk about that later, no worries. Let's move to NDI Studio Monitor. So I'll go to my desktop real quick. I've got my Studio Monitor right there. So this makes my laptop into basically a studio monitor. Just wait till it powers up. I can go full screen, there we go. And as you can see again, it's one of my cameras right there. So Studio Monitor is basically what it says, it's a monitor. So it monitors all the NDI sources you have on your network, but it can do many more things as well. So I'll just run through the main features to start off with. So as you can see on the side, if I move to the side, we have a little bit of control here. So I can move my camera using these on-screen controls. I can zoom in and out when necessary. I have some focus as well. I can store and recall presets, and that can all be done from within the Studio Monitor. Now if I go here, this is where you select your NDI sources in the top left corner. Here you can see my own desktop capture, which is available on the network, but also my 3 NDI cameras as shown before in vMix. These are also available in Studio Monitor, and you can use all these tools at the same time. There's nothing to worry about on your network, because NDI can use multicast network. You have to set up your network properly to support multicast, but once it does, you don't have to worry about flooding your network when using a single source on multiple clients, simply because the network infrastructure will take care of the distribution of the video signal, instead of that every video signal will be retrieved from the source itself. So normally when you don't have multicast, if you open 3 clients, 3 different PCs, and you want to open up 3 of the same cameras over NDI, it would pull 3 times the stream from one camera. So if you're using high bandwidths, this can easily either overflood the encoder in the camera, or it can flood your network itself. So that's something you need to consider when designing a network that is using NDI. So make sure that multicast is available if you want to use multiple clients on a single source. That makes it much easier to manage. So as you can see, I can switch between my cameras again. There I have myself. Here you can see basically the latency between HDMI and HX. Me in the front is HDMI, me in the back is NDI HX. So that gives you a little bit of an idea about the latency between these 2 sources. Again, of course, I've got all 3 cameras available to me, including this one. And for each and every camera, as soon as you select it, you have this control feature available. Now you can open up multiple instances of NDI Studio Monitor, so you can have all 3 cameras on your desktop with the controls available under your fingertips. So that makes it really easy. As you can see down here, you can also record, which makes it very convenient because you can also record what you're seeing. There's another nice feature. Let's see if it's active at the moment. No, it's not. There's also a way that you can control the Studio Monitor from your laptop's browser, or from somewhere else even in the network. I'll need to reboot Studio Monitor to show you that. As you can see, there is an IP address down here. Keep that in mind. 72 port 81. I'll just browse to that. Log in. There we go. So now I've got basically remote control over Studio Monitor. As you can see, I can select my sources and I can actively switch them. Well, though that's causing an endless loop, sorry. There we go. I was selecting my own desktop capture and that makes it an endless loop. Simple mistake. But as you can see here, I can select my sources and I can even select overlays. So I can do a picture in picture, as you can see there. And I can switch everything around and create some nice illusions as well. Anyway, this just gives you an idea about how powerful these little tools are. They are free tools, but you can do a lot with them. So I can use Studio Monitor as a recording as well, recording studio, and I can even remotely control it. I can switch sources and I can stop recording, which is a great thing. I can even create overlays if necessary. And I can stream those because as you can see here, this is an overlay of my own desktop capture again. So you can do really fun things with this Studio Monitor. A very powerful tool, really helpful in a lot of circumstances. Okay, back to my presentation. Move on to the next one, NDI Virtual Input. Now this is a really cool little application from newtek. So this really enables any NDI source on the network to be retrieved on a laptop or PC as a general webcam. So you can use any camera on your network as a camera for video conferencing, for example. So if you have Zoom as an application, you simply run this virtual input and you select the camera you want to connect to it, and it will show in your Zoom or Skype or Google Meets, and it will show as if it is just any regular webcam. So all of a sudden you have an IP-enabled video conferencing solution. So let's give you a quick show of how that works. Let's go to my desktop. So here I've got the app, might be a little bit small on your screen, but trust me, this is the webcam input tool. It will not open up a screen or anything like that, but if I go to the site, there's a little icon right there. You can right click it, you can select which camera you want to connect to. And that's basically all the setup that's needing to be done. Now if I open up, let's open Zoom, for example. There we go. It's my Zoom account. Open up the settings, go to video, and here you'll find, besides your regular integrated webcam in my laptop, you'll find the newtek NDI video. So there we go. I've now selected my NDI camera as my webcam. Now the fun thing is, usually when you want to use multiple cameras on USB, it's always quite a bit of a hassle to change them around, but with NDI, simply select the other camera you want to use as an input, and all of a sudden you have a multi-camera conferencing solution, all built into this free tool. So all you need is NDI enabled sources, download the free tools from ndi.tv, and you're done. So this comes in really handy. There we go. Well, Screen Capture HX, I can't really show that because it is running currently, but that's basically what I'm using to show you the PowerPoint in the back that's being transmitted over NDI to vMix, and I use that as an overlay in my setup. But it's really simple to set up. You just open the application, you select which bandwidth you want to use, the resolution and the frame rate. It'll make your screen available on the network. You can include even the different audio sources on your laptop, so you can actually choose as well which audio is being transmitted. It's not just all audio, but you can also select individual sources. So if you only want to transmit your microphone from your laptop, that's possible. But if you want to transmit all the audio that is being played on your laptop, for example, you can also do that as well. You can include the capture of your mouse cursor. So what I'm doing here is exactly that. You can actually see my mouse cursor going on right there. And you can allow KVM control. So if somebody is watching from the other side with Studio Monitor, it can actually take control of your laptop as well. So it's also a remote desktop kind of solution. So as you can see, they might look like very simple applications, but there's a lot more to them, and you can come up with some really elaborate system designs making smart use of these free tools. It's a very powerful combination between an NDI source and these tools. One more, a little bit more complicated thing, NDI Access Manager. Now, I've known a lot of people that really had no clue what this is all about, but I'll try to explain this in a more practical way, because it is a very powerful tool in itself as well, just like all the others. I'm repeating myself, but there we go. Let's move back to my desktop, open up the NDI Access Manager. There we have it. No, we don't have it, do I? Where's my Access Manager? Oh, there we go. That's a little bit confusing. Let's change background here. There we go. So this is the NDI Access Manager. Now it's a little bit small. Maybe I can't enlarge it, unfortunately, but I'll talk you through the different features that it allows you to play around with. So you have several different tabs right here at the top. You have your receive groups, your remote groups, output groups, and some advanced settings. One thing to start off with is the receive groups. So NDI in itself basically is a protocol that enables sources to be displayed on the entire network. Now there's plenty of applications you can think of where it's not wanted to have hundreds of sources available to a single user, because that might be not helpful. It might actually be confusing because they simply don't know which source they are allowed to use in that case. So for example, if you're talking about fixed installations in combination with the virtual input, so the webcam input, when you have a large office building, hundreds of rooms with hundreds of these installations, you don't want all these 100 cameras to be available in every room. There's also the privacy aspect, of course, but it's also confusing because people don't know which webcam they need to pick, or they end up with enormous lists from which they have to choose, and that sort of beats the purpose where NDI is built for. It needs to be convenient. So you can actually limit the devices you have available on the network. So I'll go quickly to my NDI Studio Monitor. As you can see, I've got this nice camera shot from the side. If I click this icon, by the way, you go straight to the IP address of the camera, so you can make some adjustments. Here I go to Network, NDI. As you can see, NDI is enabled. You can see where you can set the name. So if you have multi-room setup, you can actually set up the room's name or number here as well. So that makes it already easier to identify which camera you should be using. And this is the part where it really becomes interesting. So every NDI source by default is available in the group public. Public is basically the default setting where every source will be available. Now, as mentioned before, it might not be helpful to have every source available. So let's make this camera available in the private group instead of the public group. And you can choose whatever name. You can also use very complex codes if you wanted to have it a little bit more secure. You can do that as well. But for the sake of this webinar, I'll just make it available in the private group. So I'll have to reboot this camera, so it'll be offline for a second or so. I'll switch my source here to one of the other cameras. There we go. And we'll just wait a second till the camera right there is rebooting. Let's hold on for a few more seconds. And it should be available now on my network, but as you can see, it isn't. Camera has been rebooted, so it's up and running. I can show you. Let's reboot. As you can see, I can still log in. There's my video. However, right there, my Avonic right camera, as I've named it, is not available on the network. Simply because I've limited the use to a private group. And as you can see, in my Access Manager, all I have here for my receiving groups is public. Now, if I want this PC, so this is really a PC-based solution. So this only affects this single PC that I'm using vMix on in this case. Or in this case, it's my laptop we're actually looking at. I'll add a new group. I name it private, so this needs to match whatever you've set up in your camera. And you can add a memo for yourself, so you actually know later on what this group was meant for. Private group, you can name it whatever. And now I've added my private group. So give it a second. I'd actually need to reboot the Studio Monitor. And there we have it again. Now Studio Monitor is looking at the public group and the private group, and all my three sources are now all of a sudden available to me. And there we have it again. So this Access Manager, which I closed down, allows you to select which groups are available to this PC. So you can even remove the public group if you don't want all the public cameras to be available, and you can limit it to just a single group as well. And you can add many more groups. Another very important feature is the remote groups. Now, corporate networks might be a little bit more complex than my local network here, where everything is sort of in the same IP range. Things are very simple here, but if you're looking at a campus, or for example, where also you have remote sources from different buildings that you want to address, then you can do that using these remote sources. So remote sources basically allow you to, I need to take one step back. MDNS really works well on local networks. It doesn't work over different network segments. It doesn't work over different subnets. It works within the subnet that the PC itself is located at. So that makes it a very powerful tool, but it's also limited. So if you have any camera available to you, but is not on the same subnet or on the same network, you need to tell your computer that it needs to look for that NDI source. Now, I don't have any remote sources here, so I can't actually demo this part. But you simply click on a new, you select that it is an NDI source, you type in the device's IP address. So if you, in this case, you do need to know the IP address of the cameras. This is beyond the zero config, of course, of NDI, but it allows you to access remote NDI cameras in the same way, basically. So as soon as I've set this up, these cameras that you've added will also be listed in those lists as you've seen before. So this is a little bit more work on the setting up side, but that's okay. It allows you to cross different network segments with NDI. Output groups. Now, as this laptop or vMix basically can also provide NDI outputs. So whatever I'm capturing, I can also send back over the network again for somebody else on the network to monitor my webinar, for example, or to show different sources. So you can do a lot of things with these. Output groups basically work the same as what I've done in the camera. You can tell which groups have access to your output. Simple as that. Then there's the advanced settings tab. So this is really small, as I can see on your screen, so I won't do too much about this. Here you really need to know what you're doing. This is really networks, setting up the network properly before you make any changes. The receiving mode, you can basically tell your laptop what your preferred method of receiving the NDI sources is. Would you prefer UDP, multi-TCP, or single TCP? So single TCP is a unicast connection, and multi-TCP is sort of broadcast kind of connection, and UDP is the multicast kind of communication, which is much more efficient on network bandwidth, but also takes a little bit more steps to set up your network itself. And that's basically the end of the Access Manager. So as you can see, NDI provided a lot of tools for you to use, and they might sound simple, but there's so many different things you can do with it. You can limit access to different sources. You can record, you can send out your outputs as well. You can use it as a virtual webcam, so there's so much to this. And these are some great tools. I hope that I've been able to show you in these, well, what was it, past 30 minutes, some very convenient tools to use in combination with everyday uses. I try not to go too deep in the theory and give you some practical tips and tricks. If you, however, have some more questions about these topics, please feel free to write us an email, send us a quick message, or give us a call, and we'll be happy to give you some advice wherever possible. So there will be more webinars coming up. The plans haven't been completely finalized, but we'll make sure to publish them and send you an email about those as well. For now, thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you soon with any of our next webinars. Thank you.